Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am going to create this peekaboo slide card. It's not quite 5x7. I've adapted this, but I found that 5x6.5 actually works a little bit better for this design. So let's go ahead and make this. Okay, so to make this peekaboo slide card, you need 3 pieces that will form your card base. This first piece measures 10 by 5 tall, and you want to score at 3.5. So it measures 10 wide along that 10-inch edge. You want to score at 3.5, and it is 5 inches tall. That's going to be the front of our card and the little peekaboo flap that has the hidden message. The next piece that we'll need is this piece here. It's going to be the middle piece, and this one measures 10 wide by 5 tall, and you want to score along that 10-inch edge at 5 inches. So you're going to score this in half, and essentially it will be a 5x5 folded card, and that's going to be in the middle of our card, and it's going to be the piece that sort of holds everything together, the front piece and the back piece, and it is going to provide that middle layer for the peekaboo flap to slide behind. So that is our second piece. The last piece we'll need is the back of the card. Now this one is going to measure 7 inches wide, and you want to score it at 6.5. 7 inches wide, 5 inches tall, score at 6.5. So this will fit into a 5x7 envelope, but it's going to be just a smidge more narrow, because it will folded still only measure 5x6.5. And so this piece will have our back of the card, and it will have the initial image that you see before you open the card. So those are the 3 main pieces that you will need to form the card base. On top of that, I'll be cutting down some mats and layers as well. So you can choose out some pattern papers if you'd like, but I'm gonna start though by creating my aperture. What I like to do is when you take your front piece and you fold that peekaboo flap down, you want to make sure whatever shape aperture that you choose, it's going to be small enough so that it is not going to overlap into where that peekaboo flap is. Because if it's too large, your peekaboo flap will be visible when the card is closed. So you don't want, if you don't want for that to happen, then choose a size and shape die that's going to be, that will fit in that space without sort of encroaching into the space where the peekaboo flap is. And I've chosen a circle die that I also made sure to compare against the stamp image that I want to put into this little aperture here. So we've cut that out of the front of our card. Then what I'm gonna do is start to decorate the front with some mats and layers. So this does measure 6.5 wide, which means if you are going to use 6x6 pattern paper, you may need to do what I'm doing here, which is to add a strip of solid color cardstock and then fill the rest with pattern paper. And I'm using Plaid for Christmas for my pattern paper today. And I'm just going to trim, I've already trimmed this to 5 inches high. I'm just going to trim off that little bit that overhangs so that I have a perfect size for covering the entire front of this card. I don't want any of the card base to show. Then I'm going to slide that pattern paper to the back of my front panel there. Pretty side face up. And the reason why I do this is so that, one, I can line up my pattern paper with my card base, exactly positioned where I want. So if you wanted to leave a little bit of your white card base showing, you could definitely do that. Just make sure it's positioned where you want it, tape it down nice and securely, and then I can put the same die that I used to cut the aperture out of my front card base right back into that aperture. And by positioning it this way, where the pretty side is face up, I'm still cutting into the pretty side, which gives me that nice professional edge. And you can actually just run it through your die cutting machine just like that, and it should cut, if not completely through your pattern paper, mostly through your pattern paper. And even though it is nestled in with that card base. So I didn't detach it, I just ran it through just as you saw it. And this mostly cut through. There was only just a little bit that that didn't cut, but that's okay, because what you can do is you can then just nestle that same circle die or whatever shape die you're using right back into the cut lines and run it through to complete the cut. So so it's at least mostly there, so you'll get the positioning correct. Or if you wanted, you could take a craft knife or a pair of scissors to cut that through. But I find it works just fine to just run it through one more time through my cutting machine. And that should get you the that position of the aperture should be perfectly transferred to our pattern paper layer, and everything should fit exactly as designed. So I can go ahead and get this attached to the front of my card. I am using, even though this is a bit of an interactive card, I am using 80-pound weight cardstock for my white card layer. And I think that is going to be perfectly sufficient, because once we get all of the layers to this, it does start to feel pretty substantial, especially since the Not Too Shabby Shop papers are nice and thick. So they are really good sort of layering weight cardstock. So I'm going to position that onto the front of my card, and then now I have to transfer that aperture again. So I've got the next piece that I need to cut that circle through, and that is that folded 5x5 sort of note card that I said would be our middle layer. You want the open end to match the edge, the right hand edge of the front of the card. So as you see it here, I've got both open ends lined up with or in the same direction as the outside edge of my card. So that folded edge should line up or face the folded edge of my front piece. And I'm going to do the same thing where I line everything up behind the front of my card, and then I will nestle that circle die right back into the aperture. This time what I am going to do is I am going to slide that card front out. Once I get this die taped down and secured, because now there's two layers, because we actually want to cut through both layers of that folded card. I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't actually cut through both layers, on top of the fact that it's being nestled into an aperture where there's two layers of cardstock. So usually it just takes like a little bit of finagling, and you should be able to kind of wiggle that that front piece off as I'm doing here, and the die, because it's taped down, should stay in its position. And so that folded note card, now we will cut through both layers. So go ahead and run that through, and what I'll do after I get that cut is I want to add an additional matte layer to the inside of this folded note card. The front of the folded note card, you're not going to see at all, so you don't need to bother with decorating that. That will get glued to the front of our card. But when you open this, you will see the inside of that note card. So I'm going to go ahead and decorate that with another layer of pattern paper. And with this one, I did want a little bit of a white border to show because there's a little bit of white in the plaid design. So I'm being careful as I tape this down to the back of that panel that it's centered, because we want it to be exactly as positioned as I would want it. And then I'm going to nestle the die right back in and do the exact same thing of just running the two together, because there's only the one layer of the white cardstock and then the pattern paper that we want to cut through. I should mention that my video today is part of a Christmas in July collaboration hop with some of my Not Too Shabby Shop team members. So if you want to see more Christmas inspiration featuring Not Too Shabby Shop products, you can click on the hashtag Xmas in July, and that should bring up all the videos of my teammates who are participating in this collaboration hop with me. If for some reason that doesn't bring up all of the videos, I'll leave links to everybody's channel in the description box below. And so you can open that up and check out some more inspiration. Okay, so now with my mats and layers, decorative pattern paper all cut out, I can start to assemble the three pieces that form our card base. And I find that for me, it's easier to put everything together so that I know exactly which image gets seen when the card is open and which image gets seen when the card is closed. And for me, that just helps to keep everything straight. And that way, when I am stamping my sentiment and my image, I know which one goes where. So to attach all of these pieces, remember we have the three pieces. We've got the front, that middle folded card, and then we have the back. And it should look a little bit something like this when you have it kind of lined up in the order that it gets attached. So from the bottom most, we have the front of our card with that extra peekaboo flap. Next, we have our folded 5x5 note card that will get glued to the front. And then finally, at the very top, there's the back of the card with that 1/2-inch glue tab along the right side. And that glue tab is what will get attached to the back of that folded 5x5 card. So this is essentially how everything is going to get attached. And so it kind of forms a little bit of a W or a little bit of an M with that little extra flap that is going to be that peekaboo panel, which is where the hidden message will go when you actually open the card. So once I get that in place, I can start to kind of glue everything down. Now, I left myself a 1/2-inch glue tab on the back panel, but part of that was peeking through the circle aperture, so all I did was just trace the line and trimmed that off so that we don't see that glue tab. And so if you wanted, you could trim the whole glue tab down a little bit and make that just a little bit more narrow for your and you may not even need to do it. It just depends on the aperture, the size and shape aperture that you decided to cut through on yours. So just be aware of that though. If it is peeking through, you can just trim a little bit of that off. Next, I'll attach the front of that note card to the front of our card base. And when you're done, it should look a little something like this. Then I am going to fully close it and trace out a circle, and then fully open it and trace out a circle. And that gives me some indications for where I can stamp my sentiment, or hidden message, and where I can stamp the initial image that I want visible. So That way I can make sure that whatever I'm stamping, it will be actually seen through the aperture. And so here I have, this is in the open position. And this is the other way that you can go about it too. You can just put the whole thing into your stamping platform in the position that it's going to find itself. So here we're looking at it in the fully open position. And so I positioned my stamp, which is the sentiment from the, I think it's cup of, let me see the stamp set. I forgot the name of it already. It's Cup of Cheer, and it says hot cocoa fixes everything. And then I have my penguin stamp. Now, you could stamp this directly onto that back panel if you want, but what I'm doing instead is I'm actually stamping it onto a separate cardstock. Layer of cardstock, and the reason for that is because I'm going to do some coloring with my alcohol markers, and alcohol markers bleed. So I don't want to stamp and color directly onto that backmost panel, because then it's going to bleed and be visible through to the back of the card, which is where on a card like this, I think is a good spot to actually write your message. So I don't want to have that bleed through visible there. So all I have to do now is just trim down this panel and see how it's bled through. So you're not going to see any of that, since I basically cut this to be the same size as that backmost panel, and I will go ahead and attach that. And so now the back, the very, very back of the card is going to be nice and white, and it won't have any of that bleed through. So then the last thing I will add is my sentiment, which this is actually from Cat Scrappiness, Happy Holidays, and that pretty much completes my card. So here's a final look at the adapted 5x7-ish peekaboo slide card that is a side folding card. If you want to see a USA 2 size peekaboo slide card that is top folding and portrait landscape, then you can check out my other video that I posted earlier this month. I'll leave a link to that at the end of this one if you want to check out another version of this. This is such a fun card to put together, and it's so fun to do a little bit of Christmas in July crafting. I hope that you'll check out that hashtag Xmas in July, and be sure to check out the inspiration from the rest of my teammates who are participating in this collaboration hop. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.